Now let's first compare the space requirements for the decision if whether we should use racks for pallets. Remember when we discussed the equipment, the different types of racks that are out there, and the other decision that we can take is stacking, meaning we just put pallets on top of each other. So what are the implications on the space requirement in our warehouse for these two options? Let's assume you are a third-party warehouse, and of course your main source of revenue is that you charge some rent for each pallet, and each month the pallet is stored in your warehouse. Your expenses typically depend on the size of the warehouse measured in square meters, and the size impacts the rent you have to pay yourself, the climate, the AC or other climate control mechanisms, the amount of cleaning you have to do, maybe security, etc. So somehow your costs depend on the size of the warehouse, more or less, and your income depends on the number of pallets you can rent out per month. Though in such a situation, of course, in order to maximize your profit, you should have as many pallet positions per unit area of your warehouse. You want to use the space as efficient as possible, put as many pallets as possible into this area. And you can achieve this by using deep lanes or vertical space. Deep lanes means we have many pallets stored back to back, and when we want to access one of these pallets with the forklift, when we want to access, for example, the third pallet that is stored back to back, and we want to access this pallet, we have to remove the pallet number 1 and 2 in front of this pallet and can access this pallet. So when we have deep lanes, it means we need less aisle space for the forklift to navigate. On the other hand, vertical space means space when we put on top of each other, when we put pallets on top of each other. So if we can put many pallets on top of each other, we can use a lot of the vertical space. So first of all, what are the requirements for stacking pallets? If you want to put pallets on top of each other, they need to have the goods that are stored on this pallet needs to allow this. So typically the pallets should not be very heavy, because if we store many heavy pallets on top of each other, then the lowest pallet is forced down by a lot of weight and it will probably break. If we have fragile products, they are also not useful for stacking. And if the top surface of the stored product on the pallets is not even, it also makes us headaches for, if it is uneven, it makes us headaches for storing, and it should be even. When we think of the copy paper boxes or bottles of soft drink, then the surface is more or less even. If there are different cartons of different sizes stored, or some kind of furniture maybe, then typically we have a very uneven surface. And of course, the better these conditions are fulfilled, the more pallets we can store on top of each other, and the more effective we can use the store space. Alternative to using pallet stacking is using a rack. And now the question is, which types of SKUs should be stored in a rack? How can we quantify this? What is the benefit of a rack? We can access product more immediately. Therefore, we also save in labor costs because it's easier to retrieve and put away the product. Depending on the number of SKUs and the amount of each SKU, it can save us pallet positions, or we can lose pallet positions. We might lose pallet positions compared to a situation without a rack if we have only a few SKUs, and on all the pallets the same SKU is stored. Then a rack might lose space because we need to build the rack itself, and this requires space and resources as well. Typically, using pallet racks is more safer to handle. The workers, it's less, accidents happen less often because it's in a way more structured, and it protects the goods from damaging, because you avoid this storing pallets on top of each other, which can create an unstable environment. So this is all avoided, and therefore it's a safer work environment. Of course, when these benefits are higher than the expected costs, we can use pallet rack storage. The bottom line is you need to decide on an SKU by SKU basis whether a pallet rack is economically justifiable for this SKU or not. It's difficult to make this on a generalized statement. It depends what you actually expect to store in your warehouse.